Supposedly, it's been kind of a mess for Marvel Studios behind the scenes in which what direction they want to go with the multiverse saga and how they want to set up Kang or introduce certain characters or revive certain characters, which all stemmed from a Variety article basically going over everything that's been kind of going on behind the scenes with like production issues with Blade, the Marvels, and a bunch of other projects. Apparently, the article was written by the same person who also stated that Ray Fisher was lying about like his accusations and whatnot, so the credibility of it is a little iffy, but the one aspect that does stand out to me the most is the idea of the whole Jonathan Majors situation and how Marvel Studios' backup plan, you know, they're like Hail Mary or whatever in case they can't utilize Jonathan Majors anymore, is to essentially replace Kang the Conqueror with Doctor Doom. And I've seen a lot of people be satisfied with this decision to be like, well, they're adapting 2015 Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars, in which Doctor Doom is the main villain in that event, so why wouldn't he be the main villain in the MCU adaptation? Like, it makes sense, right? And we can assume that they take inspiration from the 2015 version instead of the first Secret Wars from like the 80s, considering the fact that incursions are like the main concept in the MCU. But I feel like a lot of Doctor Doom fans that are hoping he'd be the main villain in Secret Wars are going to be very disappointed, because the Secret Wars that they're going with in the MCU, even though it might have similarities, is already going in a somewhat different direction from the comic version. Because in the comics, for the most part, Secret Wars is mainly about the interaction and the dynamic between like Reed Richards and Doctor Doom. And the reason why it pays off so well is because of how many stories decades prior to the Secret Wars event that Doctor Doom played in and how he greatly impacted the Marvel Universe, you know, mainly the Fantastic Four and Reed Richards. But I think it'd be a very big mistake to replace Kang the Conqueror with Doom in the MCU, because one, I think it's way too late. You've already set the foundation for Kang the Conqueror due to the fact that there's an entire Disney Plus show with 2 seasons all about setting up this villain. You have an entire Avengers movie with the villain's name in the title, so like coming back and rectifying all that just to bring in Doom would just be a cop-out. And not to mention the fact that Doctor Doom is essentially like an afterthought. Like, he's the backup plan, like he's like the secondary villain. He's like, oh, in case scenario. No, he should be the main threat. Like, he's him type B. Doom isn't the type of character you bring in just because something isn't working. He's a type of character that you build up to and have an entire phase centered around him. That's why I think it'd be better to have him be the main threat after Secret Wars and like this supposed MCU soft reboot. That way you can bring in fresh new faces like Fantastic Four, X-Men, and then bring in those villains like Doctor Doom or some of the more mutant characters like Magneto. And in the context of Secret Wars, it would kind of be like a sort of weird out of focus shift, narratively speaking, as let's say like the general audience, like you don't know much about Doctor Doom, you just see this random guy come in, kill Kang, and now he's like the big bad. But it's like, who is this person? What are his motivations? Why is he here? We don't know that because he's barely been introduced in the MCU yet. The only way I could see like a justification for bringing in Doom as the main threat instead of Kang is if Doom was actually introduced in the MCU simultaneously with Kang the Conqueror's introduction in Loki as He Who Remains. So like let's say I had like Loki, Quantumania setting up Kang, but maybe you had like a post-credit scene in Wakanda Forever, or maybe he was like the main villain in the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. Like if Doctor Doom had major appearances in MCU projects, then it would kind of make sense to be like, okay, they're setting him up as to be like sort of significant character that the Avengers have to face. But that's just not the case. There has been not even a mention of Victor Von Doom or Latveria. Like, I just can't really imagine a world where they have Doctor Doom as a main threat, yet we haven't even seen him interacted with his greatest rival, Reed Richards. Like, that just doesn't make sense at all. And if worse comes to worse, like that for some reason, like let's say, you know, he's found guilty or whatever, and you know, things don't go well with the trial and they can't use Jonathan Majors, really, I feel like your only viable option would be just to recast. Now, I know that seems a bit problematic due to the fact they solidified how every Kang variant looks like Jonathan Majors, but I feel like it'd be way easier to like rectify that and sort of shape around that narratively instead of just bringing in a whole new character you haven't even introduced yet and be like, oh yeah, he's the big bad guy now. It's like pulling a whole Naruto Shippuden, the whole Black Zetsu and Kaguya thing. It's like most people hate Kaguya because he just came in out of nowhere, while Madara is set up as the main villain. Madara, Kang, Kaguya, Doom. Like, it just doesn't work. Like, Marvel, you've already committed way too deep into setting up Kang the Conqueror. Like, you have to just go through with it and finish it out. Like, even if something isn't working out with Jonathan Majors, just recast. I mean, I feel like most people wouldn't have an issue with it, right? Like, continue with it. Don't shift now just because you're panicking because you don't know what to do.
You laid your bed, you better stay there! You better stay there! You laid your bed, you better stay there!
And if for whatever reason they truly decided that it was the best option to go with Doom, what they should have done was spend the majority of Phase 4 and 5 setting up characters like Doom himself and the Fantastic Four, instead of introducing a bunch of subsidiary / derivative characters of the OG Avengers in like these mundane, mediocre Disney Plus shows. On top of that fact, I feel like bringing in Doctor Doom in Secret Wars would already just overcrowd the movie itself, because according to like different leaks and rumors that we've heard, it just seems like the movie's gonna be really crowded in terms of where they're gonna go narratively, how it sets up the future MCU, and the characters that they're trying to introduce, like Fox characters, Raimi's Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, you know, all these different characters from different Marvel universe, as Kevin Feige pretty much confirmed that every Marvel movie to have come out essentially takes place in the MCU multiverse, and they're gonna try to bring that all into this movie. And it's like, okay, now we have to add an extra like 45 minutes of runtime trying to explain who Doctor Doom is, because even though we might know who he is from the comic source material, we don't know the context of his character in the MCU because he hasn't even been introduced yet, his motivations, how he ties into the overall story, and how the heroes are going to defeat him. Like, is it just going to be like, okay, here's Doctor Doom's first major appearance in the MCU and he's already going to get defeated? Like, how would he be utilized after Secret Wars in this supposed reboot? Like, it's just messy at the end of the day, and I think it would just be much easier on Marvel's part to just recast the character. If worst comes to worst, Jonathan Majors isn't able to play the character, which I hope isn't the case, because I really liked what Jonathan Majors has done in Loki and in Quantumania, even if Quantumania is kind of a stinker.